And in this question, I want you to close your eyes. And I will close my eyes as well. And we're going to imagine the year 2050.
And my job today is to give people hope, because if we all lose hope, we are doomed.
Many people here, many hearts and many souls are gathered to listen to an idol, to a hero, and to a woman who transferred the way we see the natural world.
There are two Janes. One is the icon, the idol, and people come to listen to, even though they've never met me. The other one is the real Jane. That's me.
What kind of dreams you had as a child?
What did he do? He married the wrong Jane.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Maha Gorton, head of the Women's Pavilion. I'm absolutely delighted, and it is a true privilege to welcome you all here this evening for what will be a truly extraordinary session at Expo City Dubai, brought to you by Terra, the world's living wonder. Tonight, we have the honor of hosting one of the most inspiring figures of our time, a true pioneer in conservation, education, and hope, Dr. Jane Goodall. Dr. Jane, founder of the Jane Goodall Institute and UN Messenger of Peace, has spent over 6 decades inspiring greater understanding and action on behalf of the natural world. Dr. Jane's incredible work has earned her countless accolades, including the Templeton Prize, the Presidential Medal of Freedom from former President Joe Biden, and hearts of millions around the world. Through her lectures, her podcast, the Jane Goodall Hopecast, and her latest book, The Book of Hope, a survival guide for trying times, she continues to remind us that no matter what challenges we face, there is always a reason to hope. Joining Dr. Jane tonight for this engaging session is MajdTalks, a sustainability expert and net zero strategist who is at the forefront of climate action in the MENA region. Majd is the host of MajdTalks, a platform that blends cutting-edge research with real-world solutions to advance decarbonization and sustainability. Together, they will take us on a journey of inspiration, insight, and action.
This planet has filled me with the wonder of all living things, great and small. We cannot ignore this earth that surrounds us, that feeds us, shelters us, replenishes our bodies and our souls, and stretches our imaginations, where animals, plants, air, water, all care for us. We're all interconnected. People, animals, our environment. When nature suffers, we suffer. And when nature flourishes, we all flourish. I do believe in the possibility of a world where we can live in harmony with nature, but only if every one of us does our part to make that world a reality, so that when you look back over your journey, your life, you can truly say, I did make a difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to MajdTalks and, of course, Dr. Jane Goodall.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you for joining us for this very, very special evening. I can feel the excitement in the room. We can see also children. And we've seen it in the eyes of many people and also sensed it in many hearts. Dr. Jane, many people here, many hearts and many souls are gathered to listen to an idol, to a hero, and to a woman who transferred the way we see the natural world. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you and to share the stage with you.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you. And you talk about this idol, you know, but as I said to you just now, there are two Janes. One is the icon, the idol, and people come to listen to, even though they've never met me. The other one is the real Jane. That's me. And I told him, he's talking to the real Jane.
You've been named many titles as well. You're an activist, environmentalist, humanitarian, ethologist, UN messenger of peace, and many, many, many other titles. But beyond these titles, you've spent 90 years on Earth dedicating your life to observing, understanding, and trying to protect the balance on Earth. When you look back at your journey, how do you describe this life of yours?
Well, it may sound strange, but it seems like I was born with a role to play, a mission. And what I've done through my life is just follow where it seems to lead. Hopefully I made the right decision at the right turning points. And so that's landed me where I am. And I give enormous credit to my mother, because when I was growing up, my father was off. He joined the army in World War II. And so I was with my mother, my grandmother. But the main thing is I was born loving animals, all animals. And she supported that love. So even when I took earthworms to bed, she said I was looking at them as though I wondered how they could move without legs. She came in and found all these worms in my bed and earth. Lots of mothers would have been angry, but she just said, Jane, I think they need the earth. So we took them back to the garden.
She's your number one supporter, right? And what do you think gave her such belief and trust in you?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. But this is how mother is supposed to be, right? To hear their children. And, yeah.
And interestingly, it's the same with chimpanzee mothers. We've been studying them, me and my team, for 65 years. It's one of the two longest studies of any animal in the world, and we're not stopping.
I want to first discuss your childhood more. I want to listen to more what kind of dreams you had as a child.
Oh, okay. Well, as I say, I was born loving animals. When I was young, World War II was raging. There was no television. Young people can't understand that today. There was no internet, there was no social media. It was books and the cinema, you know, but no television. So I spent my time out in the garden, in nature, and books. I loved books. And we couldn't afford to buy new books, so my books came from the library, and Mum found books about animals. And I found this little second-hand bookshop, and I used to spend Saturday afternoon there, and I saved up my few pennies of pocket money. And on this occasion, I was 10 years old, and there was a little book called Tarzan of the Apes. And people know Tarzan today from movies and things, but back then I read the book. And I fell passionately in love with this glorious Lord of the Jungle. What did he do? He married the wrong Jane. So anyway, that was when my dream began. I will grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. Yes.
You dreamt of Africa?
Yes,
Wow.
after reading Tarzan and Dr. Dolittle, actually. And everybody laughed at me. How will you do that? You don't have money, Africa's far away, it's a dangerous place. And anyway, you're just a girl. It's 80 years ago.
I've read it somewhere as well that you've also dreamt yourself of a man, as a man. right?
I did. I always dreamt I was a man going on adventures.
Wow, where did this dream come from?
I have no idea. I mean, dreams were all different. I've no idea. Yeah.
And
But
then,
anyway, so, you know, when everybody laughed at my dream, except Mum, who said, if you really want to do this, you're going to have to work really hard, take advantage of every opportunity, and if you don't give up, I'm sure you'll find a way. And I've told that to young people all around the world, especially in underprivileged communities. And hundreds of them have said, Jane, thank you. You taught me because you did it. I can do it too. So how lucky that I grew up without money.
Wow, with a great mother as well.
Yes, great mother. And growing up in the war where you didn't take food for granted, you didn't take life for granted. And that's helped me in what I'm doing now.
So years later, your dream became a reality. You've been selected by Dr. Louis Leakey for a study in Gombe in Tanzania. Dr. Louis at that time was studying the origins of the human evolution. Tell us more about, if you can describe the first moments when you stepped into the forest of Gombe.
Well, finally getting there. At that time, what we call Tanzania today was Tanganyika, was part of the crumbling British Empire. And the authorities said, first of all, no, we're not going to have this young girl out in the forest on her own. Finally, because Leakey never gave up, they said, well, she can't come alone. So who volunteered to come? That same amazing mother. So we landed on the shore and they helped us put up. We had one ex-army tent. It was a very cheap expedition. And then I was able to, when the tent was up, it was about 4:30, and I climbed up and sat there looking out over Lake Tanganyika. And it was just like, this is my dream. I'm here.
You're living your dream, exactly.
I was living my dream. But then the problem was that for 4 whole months, the chimps took one look at me and disappeared into the forest. And I only had money for 6 months because I hadn't even been to college. Who was going to give money to this young girl?
So it took them 4 months to trust you, right?
Yes.
You can approach them. How was the first moment when you gained trust from a chimp?
Well, the first chimpanzee who began to lose his fear was a very calm male. I named him David Greybeard. He had white hairs on his chin. You could be like him in about 10 years, perhaps.
I'm like him now.
No, you're not.
No?
No. He was really white. And anyway, so this one day, I expected him to run away, and he just sat there and looked at me, and I sat down, and it was just the most amazing feeling.
Was he the oldest in the community, or?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't that old. He was only about 35.
Okay.
And they can live to be 60 in the wild. But he was calm, and he wasn't the top-ranking male, but he was a leader. The others trusted him, so they would often follow him.
Okay. Wow, that's a really interesting story. And so here I want to ask you, after 5-6 months, you're building the trust with the chimps and you're observing them and understanding their behavior. How similar are chimps to humans and how different?
Well, that was the biggest thing that I discovered when thanks to David being so calm, the others would gradually, look at him and me and think, well, she can't be so scary after all. And I got to know them, their vivid personalities, how different each one was from the other, their gestures of communication, kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting one another for reassurance, begging for food, and then go away.
Crying as well?
Yes.
Or like they express negative emotions other than anger
negative,
and rage?
that's, go away.
Okay. Yeah.
But then 2 males competing for dominance, and they do compete.
Okay.
And they'll stand upright, hair bristles, and they'll swagger from foot to foot, furious scowl on their faces. Sometimes they'll raise a fist, and it reminds me so much of certain male human politicians. No names.
Yeah, no names, no names. So when you arrived to Gombe, you had no credentials, no trainings, and no degree, and you were conducting scientific research. But how did this help you? Like, you didn't have any degree.
Yeah,
It helped you in your mission, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I just did what I'd always done. I watched them, I wrote down what they did. I didn't know what I was later told, that I shouldn't have given them names, but numbers. You know, David, Greybeard, Goliath, Flo, Fifi, and so on. And I couldn't talk about their personalities. I couldn't talk about problem-solving minds, and I certainly couldn't talk about emotions, like happiness, sadness, fear, and so on. But I had this great teacher when I was a child who taught me that was rubbish, that these erudite professors were stupid, and that was my dog. So you can't share your life with a dog, a cat, a rabbit, a horse, a falcon, whatever, and not know the professors were wrong. But I didn't finish answering your question about similarities and differences. I found to my dismay, they were even more like us than I thought when I realized they have a dark and brutal side, and they're capable of a kind of war. And how are they different? Well, I think the main difference is that at some point in our evolution, we developed this sophisticated way of using words for language. So although chimps and other animals have great communication skills, we can get together people from different knowledge groups to discuss a problem. We can teach children or adults about things that aren't present because we use words and we can make pictures with words. And I actually think that it was this that enabled our intellect to grow so explosively.
I think a year after, you made one of the most groundbreaking discoveries of our time. Your discovery of chimpanzees using tools has redefined the way we see chimpanzees, humans, and tools. Tell us more about that.
Well, I was walking through the forest. My mother had just left 2 weeks before, and it was kind of a bit lonely, and there was nobody to tell exciting things of the day. I had a cook and a boat driver, but they were interested, but it wasn't the same, you know, it's having your mother there or a friend. So I saw this chimpanzee sitting on a termite mound, and through my binoculars, he was about as close as, a bit further away than the front row here. And it was David Greybeard again. And I saw him reach out and pick grass stem, scratch at the termite mound, open up one of the burrows, push the straw down and pick it out and eat the termites. I saw him picking leafy twigs, and to use that as a tool, he had to strip the leaves on the side twigs. So he was using and making tools. And that actually was thought to be the one thing that made us more different from other animals. So Leakey made his famous remark. He sent me a telegram, and he said, now we must redefine man the tool maker, redefine tool, or accept chimpanzees as humans. So that brought in the National Geographic Society. And they said, okay, we'll fund this research after the 6 months initial money ran out.
Yeah. Before you shared it with Dr. Leakey, did you realize how significant this discovery was?
Well, you know, I'd read a book about a captive group of chimps written by a psychologist, and he described them using tools in all sorts of ways. But science had decided that that was just because our behavior had rubbed off on these captives. So it was poo-pooed. So I wasn't surprised, but I knew how exciting it was. Yes, because I knew what science thought. And Western science, I should quickly say, Western science. And if people had gone into the forest and asked the pygmies, they would have told you that chimps use tools. But even more exciting, you know, right at the beginning, I speculated that chimps living in different areas would have different cultures. And that was frowned upon. I mean, that was even worse than saying they had personalities. Culture is unique to us, but it now turns out, yes, they use different objects for different purposes in different parts. You know, when I began, it was just me in Gombe, and then by the early 80s, there were 6 other study sites across Africa. And so we brought people together, and yes, there were all these differences.
I have one more follow-up question about this research and discovery. How did the academic community react?
The academic community?
Yes.
Oh, why should we believe a girl? She hasn't even been to college. One scientist actually said she must have taught the chimp to use tools, which, you know, as they were running away from me, would have been pretty miraculous.
But that would be also advanced if you were able to teach them, right? So
it would have been amazing.
yeah.
I mean, you can teach them, but I mean, they've got to know you.
And trust you. And,
yeah. So, you know, they were, and then there was scientists saying, oh, well, she's only famous because she's written an article for National Geographic, and she's only got the Geographic behind her because she's got nice legs. Well, if you said that now,
you've been called even the National Geographic cover girl at some point, right?
National Geographic, I wrote an article and had a picture on the cover.
Yeah, exactly.
So if somebody said today, she's only there because she's got nice legs, they'd be sued, right?
Yeah.
I said, all I want to do is be out there with the chimps. So if I've got there because of my legs, good old legs. And they were nice. I've seen the pictures.
Dr. Jane, you spent decades observing and studying chimpanzees, but at some point you've decided or you've realized that science alone wasn't enough. You needed to take action. Can you describe that moment to us?
Yes, it was that occasion I described when we brought the scientists from the different chimp study sites together for a conference, when we realized, yes, chimps have culture. And at the same time, we had a session on conservation, and it was shocking. Everywhere they reported forests being destroyed, chimp numbers decreasing. There was a terrible session on conditions in some captive situations, and particularly the awful one was medical research. Our closest living relatives, so like us, with our brains almost the same as ours, but smaller, in 5-foot by 5-foot cages for maybe 30, 40 years. All they know is people in white coats coming to do nasty things to them. I couldn't sleep after that. And so I knew, okay, it wasn't a decision. People say, must have been a tough decision to leave Gombe. But I didn't decide. It was just, I went to the conference, I had my PhD by then, in spite of the scientists telling me I'd done it all wrong.
So you got a PhD without the bachelor, right? You didn't have, wow.
Because Leakey said there was no time to mess about with an undergraduate degree. And that's why I was so nervous going to Cambridge University, marching in to do a PhD, and then being told I'd done everything wrong. But luckily, I suppose I've always been, and again, I think it was Mum, you know, stand up for what you believe in. Listen to people, be ready to change, be ready to listen to good advice, but don't compromise what you believe to be right.
And then you started with activism. So after science, activism, and you launched the Jane Goodall Institute. Can you tell us more about the Institute, when it was launched, and what inspired you to create the Institute?
Well, interesting, really, what inspired the Institute, because by that time I had a few students at Gombe, and I can't remember the year, but 4 of them were kidnapped. It was a rebel group, came over Lake Tanganyika from the Congo and kidnapped 4 students. And all my funding dried up. Geographic had stopped funding. and I had other sources. But for some reason, this kidnapping was my fault or something, because they all stopped giving money. And I had to go around and basically, but some wonderful friends said, well, Jane shouldn't be having to beg for money. And they started the Jane Goodall Institute. And they wanted it to be just for chimp research. And right from the beginning, I said, no, also education and conservation. Because remember, at the beginning, I didn't want to be a scientist. I like to be called, and still do, a naturalist.
Okay.
So anyway, we gradually got money to build up the institute. And it is now in 25 countries. And we have a global office. It's a virtual office, which ensures that the different chapters adhere to the same mission and the guidelines, and they sign a charter. And there's also the Jane Goodall Legacy Foundation, because I have to build up an endowment. So the Jane Goodall Institute is to study chimpanzees, and in some cases other animals, like JGI Malaysia studies orangutans. It's also education, and we started the Roots and Shoots program for young people. And then conservation. We now one of the leading groups to doing conservation science with new technology, GIS, GPS, satellite imagery, camera traps, but never ever leaving the importance of written notes.
Your approach with the Institute is also quite unique, because you focus on communities, right, and indigenous people. Tell us more why it is important to focus on people and how it helps in conservation efforts.
Okay, well, making this, after deciding I had to leave Gombe, I didn't really know what to do. I just knew I had to try and do something. So again, it was the geographic gave me some money, and I visited the 5 of the other sites, and I learned a lot about problems facing chimps, the bushmeat trade, mothers shot so that infants could be shipped overseas for pets or entertainment. By the way, some are coming through UAE, and that's illegal. So it needs a little bit. But anyway, some of them are caught in wire snares. But at the same time, I was learning about the plight faced by so many of the African people. And it came to a head. I flew over Gombe, and it's the smallest national park in Tanzania. And when I began in 1960, it was part of this great equatorial forest belt that stretches across Africa. By the mid-1980s, when I flew over in a tiny plane, I was shocked. I was looking down on this tiny island of forest, and all around were bare hills, the only patches of forest in the really steep ravines. And it hit me, why are the people cutting down the trees? Because they're struggling to survive. They're poor, cripplingly poor. They have no health and education facilities. And, they're cutting down the trees to get money from charcoal or timber, or to sell food, or even just to grow food for their families. And so it hit me. If we don't find ways to help these people make a living without destroying the environment, we can't save chimps, forests, or anything else. So JGI, the Jane Goodall Institute, we began our method of community-led conservation, Takari. And instead of a group of arrogant white people marching into a poor African village, and there are 12 around Gombe, it was a group of local people who went into the villages and asked them what they thought we could do. They wanted more food, restore fertility to the overused farmland with no chemicals, and then better health and education. So we worked with the local Tanzanian authorities, who should have been doing that anyway. And that's grown. It's now in villages in Tanzania throughout Chimp Range, and it's in 6 other African countries. And the people have become our partners in conservation, because they understand protecting the environment isn't just for wildlife. it's also for our own future.
Our biggest passions as well is empowering the next generation and youth. And we have many children here in the audience. You mentioned the Roots and Shoots program. If you can tell us more about this program and how children can participate in this program.
Okay, well, it began when I was traveling around even in the late 80s, there were young people losing hope, even back then. And this was when I was starting traveling around the world, which I still do, 300 days a year. And so when I was meeting these young people, high school, university, they seemed, angry, or they seemed depressed. And when I began asking them, why do you feel like this? One and all said more or less the same, we feel like this because you have compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, we've been stealing the future of young people for years. But is there nothing they can do? No, I said, I don't agree with you. So Roots and Shoots began in '91 with 12 high school students in Tanzania. And we decided that the main message of Roots and Shoots would be every single individual makes an impact every single day, and you can choose what sort of impact you make. And because everything's interrelated in this life, we decided every group should do 3 projects, one to help people, one to help other animals, one to help the environment that we share. So what started with those 12 high school students began spreading in Tanzania, and then it began moving beyond Tanzania. And we are now in 75 countries and growing. We have members from kindergarten through university. And if you'd been here this morning, you would have seen 12 Roots and Shoots groups from 12 schools in UAE.
I saw it on social media, on Terra's account.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, about 12 years ago, someone made a little film, and there was a Roots and Shoots section. So although it's moved on a lot, this little piece of video does really show very well the different kinds of projects. The key thing about Roots and Shoots is young people can decide what they want to do. So every member of a group doesn't have to do people, animals, environment, as long as the group as a whole does it.
I want to ask you, is there any story of a group or a person who really took action as part of this Roots and Shoots program and made a difference? Do you remember any of these stories?
Well, there's so many. But one story I love because it's very symbolic and it represents another area of Roots and Shoots that I haven't mentioned. And it was the very first group established in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it was about 15 little children aged 8 to 12, something like that. And they decided that what they wanted to do was put trees back on a mountain. They said, there's a mountain over there. And it used to be a sacred mountain we discovered by talking to an old person. Well, their mentor, he knew it was impossible because it was much bigger than the kids thought. But he didn't want to damp their enthusiasm. So he got some saplings donated from a forester friend. Then he had to go, because this is near Gombe where there's always rebels coming in because it's mineral rich. And so he had to go to the group that was there then and talk to the colonel of the rebel army to ask if it was okay. So this man said, well, it's quite stupid, but I suppose there's no harm, but I'll have to send soldiers with you. So now you imagine there are these 15 little kids, and it's much further than they thought, and it's very hot, and they're carrying their little sapling and something to dig with. And they get there and the ground is really hard. And they're with 4 big Congolese soldiers with AK-47 rifles. Well, after about 10 minutes, the youngest is a little girl, and she starts to cry. She can't make the hole. And after a short time, one of the soldiers leans his gun against the tree, and goes to help her. And within the next 10 minutes, all the soldiers have left their guns and they're helping children plant trees for the future.
Wow. Obviously, one small action can make a big difference, right? Many youth also, you mentioned this before, feel kind of overwhelmed, with everything, with technology, with social media, with their emotions, with climate action, climate anxiety. And some of them feel that they are too small to make a difference. What do you tell them?
Yeah, well, I get many people coming to me, adults usually, very depressed. They say, well, I've given up because, what can I do? What can I do? I'm one person, I can't make a difference. Well, if it was just you, and you pick up a bit of trash every day, just you, wouldn't make a difference at all. But I say to them, look, we've got this expression, think globally, act locally, but it's the wrong way round. Because if you think globally, if you think of what we're facing today, whether it's political or social unrest or environmental damage, it's terrifying. And you do feel, well, what can I do? But I say, look, go to your community. What do you care about? Do you care about the trash in the streets? Do you care that there are no trees left? Do you want to plant new trees? Would you like to restore the mangroves? Would you like to help look after abandoned dogs or cats? Go and do something with your friends and you'll find you have made a difference. And that will make you feel good. So then you'll want to do more.
Small
and
steps.
You'll get other people to join you. And then you realize, especially if you're JGI and especially with young people and roots and shoots, there's young people all around the world just like me, picking up trash, looking after dogs and cats, planting trees and restoring mangroves and so on. And here they're restoring seagrass, which is really important, one of the groups, because that absorbs an awful lot of CO2 as well as forests. So then people feel hope. And my job today is to give people hope, because if we all lose hope, we are doomed.
True.
And if you'd been there this morning, if you'd seen all the projects, and I think maybe, I don't know if it's going to be released, but it was videoed this morning. And you look around at the young faces, and I said, you are the hope for the future. And it's not just you here in Dubai, it's groups like you in 75 countries.
I have a signal of time, so I want to discuss a very important video which we see on the internet. Your work beyond science and activism is very deeply emotional. And I think for me and for many in this room, the story of Wounda is one of the most moving stories in your journey. Tell us more about Wounda.
One of the projects of the Jane Goodall Institute is looking after young chimps who are being confiscated by the government because they're being trafficked. And you can't put them back in the forest. Their mothers are being killed. They're usually about 1 to 2 years old. So there are sanctuaries set up. And JGI runs the biggest sanctuary in Africa, Chimpunga. We've got nearly 200 chimpanzees there now. It began more than 10 years ago. And this particular chimpanzee, and I know many of you have seen this video, but the story is extraordinary. She came in, she's called Wounda, and in the local language that means close to death. So she came in as a little infant, almost dead, but our wonderful veterinarian, Rebecca, managed to bring her back to life. And she interacted with others and was doing well. Then when she was about 8 or 9, she got deathly sick. And again, she was brought back. And she was chosen to be one of the chimpanzees to go onto one of the beautiful 3 big islands the government has given us, where the chimps can be not totally wild, but at least out of the sanctuary where there's too many chimps. So the point I want to make is I was there when she was released. And I'd never met her until that day. This is the amazing part of this story. I only met her that day. And when you see what happens when she comes out of the cage, I would love you to imagine that you're there, that all you can hear is the ripple of the water and the birds and the insects and the rustle of wind in the leaves. It was a very magical moment. So don't start applauding, please, because it was so special. And I know there's music now, but I'm going to get that removed and make it even more like it was. But you will see how very, very special that moment was and how extraordinary.
I think we can play the video.
Yes.
Yeah? Let's do that.
This is a really exciting moment for me. The Jane Goodall Institute's Chimponga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center in the Republic of Congo has for years been caring for infants whose mothers were killed, mostly for the illegal bushmeat trade. Many of them are now fully grown. Recently, we acquired 3 large forested islands on the beautiful Kwilu River, where we can release many of the chimpanzees from our overcrowded center. In here is Wounda, and she nearly died, but thanks to Rebecca, she came back from the dead, and here she is about to come out into this paradise. She's the 15th chimpanzee to get her freedom here, and we hope ultimately to have about 60 on the island. Today is the first time I've met Wounda. I talked to her on the boat, trying to reassure her. She must have wondered what was happening. None of us could predict exactly what she would do once the cage door opened. It was a very, very touching moment. One of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me. The warmth of her embrace is something I shall never forget. For Wounda and all the other chimpanzees we're working to bring here, Chinzula Island will provide a wonderful forest home where they will be cared for and safe.
And by the way, I should say that all our female chimps are on birth control because we've got too many and it's expensive. And you know, they're coming in still. Yeah. But 3 times over all the years, the birth implant has gone wrong. One of them was Wounda. And 5 years ago, I think it was 5, she gave birth to a healthy infant on the island. She's the dominant female of that island. Oh, okay. And we called the baby Hope.
What an emotional moment, right? And I think Wounda knew that it was you behind all of this.
Well, one of the guys said, how does that chimp know it was this lady who made this all happen? Very often with an animal, there's a strange kind of telepathic communication. It happens with dogs, happens with cats. Chimps, other animals too.
So this leaves me to my last question before we go to the Q&A session. And in this question, I want you to close your eyes. And I will close my eyes as well. And we're going to imagine the year 2050. And I want to ask you, what you would like to see in 2050 and what do you fear most?
I have two pictures of 2050. And one I don't like. I don't like to think of it, but I sometimes do. And that's what happens if we go on behaving the way we're behaving, if we go on destroying nature, if there aren't more groups like here at Terra who are caring for the future and making decisions that ask, how does what we do today affect generations ahead? But the vision I like to think of is very much to do with all the Roots and Shoots groups and everybody like Roots and Shoots who are working to make the world better for people, animals, and the environment. Soldiers laying down their guns, war ending. Roots and Shoots graduates who've been through Roots and Shoots from 1991 taking over decision-making positions so that war will certainly be less when we can truly live in harmony with nature, bringing nature back. And that's the vision that will happen if we all think every single day about what we do and make wise choices. The world will change.
Beautiful. We have a QR code which was shared with the audience, and we have a couple of questions maybe you can ask. How many minutes we have? 5 more minutes. Okay.
Make it 10.
What is the most unexpected moment of inspiration you've experienced while on the road?
In the wild.
Yeah, in your journey.
My journey. Oh, goodness. You know, when you live to be 90, there's an awful lot of moments in the journey. The most inspirational, that's a difficult one. I've been inspired and moved to tears by what happened with Wounda. That was amazingly inspirational. But I've been moved to tears by some of the stories of people who've been imprisoned and been tortured and have somehow survived and come out with positive feelings, wanting to change the world. And I've met a good many people like that. Today it's the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz in the Holocaust. And I think back over those times, how inspirational to think that there were people who survived and people who are out there in the world doing good.
So I'm a 10-year-old and never eaten meat. How can we encourage other people to truly care about animals enough to become vegetarian?
Well, that's very interesting. I became a vegetarian because I learned about factory farming and the factory farming of cows and goats and pigs who are so highly intelligent. Give me Piglet. Piglet. No, the piglet. The pig, yeah. No, that's a cow.
Oh, I did not see it. The pig.
So, Piglet. Pigs are highly intelligent. And Piglet represents a pig rescued from a factory farm and seemed to love to watch the rescuer painting. So she gave him a paintbrush. And the pig, now named Picasso, paints and loves painting. You can Google her, and her paintings sell for more than $5,000. And yet here they are, cooped up in unbelievably awful situations in the factory farms, along with the cows, that is cow. And so I stopped eating meat because of ethical reasons, the horror of the factory farms and the way animals are killed and kept and abused. But then I realized the other benefits. One is to our health, because our gut is actually made to not be heavy meat eating at all. We get lots of digestive problems. But also, huge areas of land are cleared to grow grain to feed the animals that we breed to eat. And more grain is grown to feed animals than starving people. Shocking. A lot of water is wasted, turning vegetable to animal protein. And as you know, in some areas, fresh water is getting scarcer and scarcer. Cows particularly produce masses of methane gas, which is a very, very virulent greenhouse gas. And then I became vegan when I realized the way that cows and laying hens and ducks are also treated. And it makes me unable to sleep at night. How can we encourage other people? Find stories to tell them. Find stories of, like Picasso, rescued from a factory farm. Help people understand, the horror that it is. But don't get mad at them. Just lead by example. Just say, I don't eat meat because. Don't tell them they mustn't, because then they won't want to listen to you. Don't you tell me what I can do. Tell them stories.
I'm going to take one more question from the audience and answer it maybe in 1 minute. So we know you love dogs. What's the most important thing you've learned from dogs?
Oh, what have I learned from dogs? People think chimps are my favorite animal. They're not, it's dogs. Dogs can be so loyal, so faithful, and you look at YouTube and you see some of these dogs who are nearly dead, and yet they come back and they will still show trust in people. Dogs are being used to guide blind people. Dogs can be used also to detect landmines like the rats and to detect illegally trafficked animals. The rats have the advantage, they can climb up the crates in the ports, which the dogs can't do. Dogs can help autistic children learn to read. There's no end to what dogs can do. But it's just, a dog comes into a room, the atmosphere immediately changes. I've seen it happen again and again, a tense business meeting, and I had a friend who was blind, and I would always ask him to come because he came with his dog where other dogs weren't allowed in. And everything changed and people were stroking the dog. So dogs truly are our best friends. And yes, it's one of my sadnesses today. I can't have a dog. Traveling 300 years a day, you can't take it over. Some people say, but you could take a little dog and I say, what a horrible life for a dog. If you love a dog, you would never, never subject them to that.
I wish we have more time to take more questions. So thank you. Thank you from my heart for being you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Well, thank you for being here, giving up your time. Thank everyone for coming. And I just must say one last thing. I could not do what I do if it was not for the Jane Goodall Institute staff and volunteers and the Roots and Shoots young people. And we've got Terra here, who works with Roots and Shoots. We've got the whole UAE team. We've got Alice, who does Africa programs. They are the people who enabled me to be me. So thank everybody.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to take a selfie with everyone. So we're going to take a selfie.
Do people stand up for it?
Me and you.
Together we can, together we will, together we must change the world. Can we all do that? Yes. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Together we can, together we will.